This is the NUMARK SCRATCH. This is the mixer I decided to go with to match up with my Reloop RP7. Looked at a bunch of different mixers, but the reason why I decided to go with this one was because size-wise it pretty much matches up with the RP7s, on top of the fact that it has a lot of features that the bigger mixers have, as far as like still has the cue points, it still runs Serato DJ Pro, you still have your effects like echo and delay and flanger, phaser, reverb, things of that nature. You have big filter knobs here, so you still have your toggle switches just like the higher end mixers, cue buttons here for your headphones, fader reverse, shift button, pad modes, your headphone jack here. And on the back of the mixer, you're going to have your on-off button here, AC plug, USB for Serato. It's got two XLR balanced outs, which is pretty crazy. Phono line switches here, RCAs, your channel 1, channel 2, of course you got your ground, master, and it even has a booth out, which is really, really cool. Got your 3-band EQ, so you got your treble, mids, bass, of course you got your tone, mic, booth, master. This is your effects. You can actually choose how much of the effect you want, dry or wet. Then of course you have your cue and your program for scratching in your headphones, and then of course the gain there. Your effects loops here, so you can actually in Serato choose how long you want your loop to be, you know, how many bars or whatnot. I'm sure there's more stuff that this mixer can do that I'm missing. The other thing I liked about it is it's got the mini Innofader, but of course, you know, with me, I want my mini Innofaders to be nice and butter smooth. This one's got that tension spring in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to open this up, take the fader out, and we're going to get that tension spring out of there. And we're going to get this thing butter smooth. And then the volumes are fairly basic, but they're good enough for what they are. You know, I do like cutting with the volumes, and unfortunately, we don't have 3 mini Innofaders in here. Alright guys, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to flip this mixer over, and then on the bottom you're going to see this little door here. There's 4 of those screws, and then if you look inside, there is your Innofader. So see, there's 1 screw there, 1 screw there. Now the whole thing should just lift out. Now from there, all we have to do is pull this connector out, which shouldn't be too difficult. Yep, just pop it out like that. So there are 2 more screws. There is 1 screw here and 1 screw here. So let's see if we can get these out. If the screw isn't coming out easily, what I like to do is I'll take the screwdriver and I'll kind of rock it back and forth like this, and then after I do that, usually the screw will let go, and then we'll lift that off, and there we go. Essentially now what we got to do is we got to take this little guy apart, get that little tension spring out of there. First thing, you're going to need a few items. So they call these helping hands. It does help hold the fader in place. You're going to need a little bit of solder, some type of solder vacuum or desoldering braid, and of course you're going to need a soldering iron of some sort. We're looking at the bottom of this. You can see these little pins here. These little pins on the bottom of the mini Innofader need to be bent up, and then this little bit of solder here needs to be removed so that we can actually pull the board up and out of the housing. One of the other tools you'll probably want to grab is some, fine needle nose pliers. These will come in handy. The other thing you're going to need is some type of little flathead screwdriver. So what we're going to try to do here is we're going to try to get underneath these little pins here. The main thing is we need to make sure that we don't do any damage to the circuit board here. I'm going to just come underneath this just like that. See how that's going? And then I'm just going to give it just a quick little push up like that. I'm just nice and gentle, just like that. Get underneath the pin, then I'm just going to kind of move it up like that. See, just enough that I can get underneath that pin there. But now that I have these bent up, now I can take the needle nose pliers here and I can just kind of bend them up the rest of the way. Pop it out. So now you can see all of those little pins are facing straight up except for this last one here. A little bit of solder on that tip there. Okay, and then what we can do is just touch this like that. That's going to help that solder liquefy. We'll take our solder vacuum here and try to suck some of that solder off of there. Let's see if we can use this desoldering braid. Alright, so I was getting a lot of movement with this little helping hand here. Wasn't helping very much. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the solder here. I'm going to take this and I'm just going to put it right here. That's going to be a little sturdier for me. Now that I have that, I can actually take the desoldering wick and put it where I need to. Put a little pressure on here, and that should help me take the rest of this solder off of this board. There we go. Just like that. Boom, just like that. Perfect. Let's see if we can now get underneath this little pin here. There we go. Move it up just a bit. There we go. And it's up. Okay. Now all we got to do is take the needle nose pliers. What we can do now is we can lift this board out. We need to be very, very gentle when we lift the board out because there is a little tiny spring that we need to be very, very aware of. It's going to be on this side. So we got to be very careful with that spring because if we lose that, well, we just don't want to lose it. Let's just put it that way. There we go. So now the board comes up and it might just pop out of there kind of like that. See this little tiny spring right here? That's the spring that I was talking about, okay? Just like that. Okay, do not lose that. So you see how this is kind of cut here where you have your little bumpers here and then the indentions here for the bumpers where they go left and right. You're going to make sure that that is on the side that says A+, okay? So all we really need to do is we just got to kind of push this up and then the whole thing comes out. See these little bumps here on the top? That's where those are going to go. See, you can see the little bumps there on the top. Okay, now all we got to do is just wiggle and that pops off like that. You can take off that little O-ring, take this off, Kind of move that to the side. Now, when we flip this over, you can see there's your little tension spring, okay? So what we need to do is we need to remove, there's a little tiny piece of plastic over that. You see that? So we need to remove that, and then that will take this tension spring out completely. Okay, we don't need that, we don't want that, we don't need that either. God, man, there's like thick grease on these. Look at this, look at my fingers. How dirty that is. Alright, so I got some isopropyl alcohol, 91%, and I got a toothbrush here, like a soft bristle toothbrush. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get this microfiber cloth, put a little bit of rubbing alcohol on it here, and I'm going to clean these bars. So we're just going to wipe that down. Alright, now that I have the bars and everything cleaned off, we can start putting it back together here. So let's do that. Okay, so remember, we have to have them facing this way because this is where the screws will go in from the top. So let's make sure we do this right. We're going to put our bar here, put our bumper, our O-ring here, O-ring, okay? So we got one. Remember, it's going to go on the side that's got that little indentation there. See, so it's just going to slide in. And then here, this is going to slide in. Okay. And we're going to take the other bar, have it slide in. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to take this little guy here and pop it in, just like that. And we're going to take this little guy here, pop it in, and pop it in, like that. Move it there, and it is good to go. You'll be able to see when I put this back on. Watch the difference here. See that? That's what we want. We want it nice and smooth. Alright, so what I'm going to use is a little bit of this deoxit fader. Okay, so I'm just going to put one little drop right here and one little drop right here. That's it. That's all I'm going to put on here. I'll work it in just like that. So now we need to put this back in. Remember where the A plus side is, that's where this is going to go down. Okay, just like that. Okay. Then we're going to take that tiny little spring, okay, that is going to go back into that tiny little hole there. Just like that. Now we need to match this up again, so we see there's a little bit of solder right there on that, so we're going to match that up with the board. All we got to do is just push it straight down, just like that. Now that we have all of that on, we just need to bend these little pins back down. And the easiest way that I found to do that is to take this little piece right here on the needle nose pliers. See how it's nice and flat? You're just going to take that, push this down, push this on here like this, and then you're just going to turn it just like that. See? And then it pushes it down. Same with this side. And all you're going to do is just kind of turn it Boom, just like that. See? It's got it nice. And then the last one's going to be the one with the solder there. So we're going to push that down, just like that. So now all I have to do is get a little bit of solder and fill that back in. Alright, so now all we need to do is put the fader back in. So we're going to plug it back in. It will only plug in one way. If you try to force it in, you're going to possibly damage the connector or the board. You don't want to do that. All you have to do is pop this little guy back in. Just like that. You might be able to see that one there and that one there. So we're going to line those up. Yep. And that's the smoothness of the fader that we want. That's pretty much it. All I need to do is put the plate on the back, put the screws back on, hook it all up, and make sure that the cut-in time on the fader is right. What I want to do is I want to recalibrate the fader because, you know, I just did the modification on this to make it smoother. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to hit the little silver button, the calibration button on the fader. We're going to reach underneath the mixer itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the mixer, and then when we turn it on, we're going to move the fader over, you know, fairly slow to the left. Okay, then we're going to hold it. Then once we have it all the way to the left, we're going to hold that button down for at least a second. And then from there, we're going to take it and move it back about the same speed to the right. And then we're going to push that button again, and we're going to hold it about a second. And then that should calibrate the fader for us. Turn the mixer on. Okay, so mixer is on. Okay, now I'm going to move the fader to the left. Just like that. I'm going to hold this. Okay, now I'm going to press the little silver button on the bottom of the fader. Hold it for about a second. 1001. Okay, let it go. Then I'm going to push it back to the right at the same speed. Hold it to the right. Then I'm going to push that button again. Okay. Now we can try fader. It's pretty good on that side. Now we're going to try it again on this side. Make sure it's about the same distance.
This, yeah, and I lace 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 this,
about
and I lace
the same to me. Oh yeah, perfect. Alright, so now that I have the fader calibrated, I'm going to do some chirp flares, and that'll let me know if the fader is actually missing any clicks or anything like that. So we're going to do chirps, and then flares, and then we're going to combine it. So everything seems to be okay.